Generation 5, the Japanese Exodus, and we're moving out at 14, a bit young, but okay. But where else would you rather turn up than the shores of America? A whole new sea of untapped Pokemon potential in what is undoubtedly the best entry to the Pokemon series to date. Fights me. I liked it before it was cool. So let's get down to business in the 5th installment of What If Pokemon Used Real Life Science, but we need a better name, so we're gonna go with World War Pokemon Episode 5. Now, I'm fully aware at this point people aren't going to go back to the previous 4 episodes to recap all the rules, so let me do it really quick for you. This ain't no TDM, it's an FFA, free for all, fight to the death. Each country is its own region, each country is independent. No legendary or mythical Pokemon, there's enough hacks as it is. No national dexes, that's kinda like using private militaries, use what your mama gave you. Finally, I just provide the tools, you decide the winner, otherwise I lose too many subscribers. Firstly, a background check, we always like to start with these. This is a slightly weirder one though. Unova is loosely based off of New York City, and as you can tell by my extremely accurate drawing, that provides some problems. Now, I'm no geography student, but there's supposed to be a bit more water. Unless this is taking place on Liberty Island, of course. This is not pointing to Liberty Island. But then the Pokemon would have to be extremely small. The smallest living thing that we know of in the entire world, for example, is a bacteria cell. And, you know, I mean, I'm no biologist, but no spine. I rest my case. Let's say for mobility reasons, because that is a huge part in world conflicts, that the different cities in the game are different states around the US. Try choosing the states that most closely resemble the vibes of the cities from the game, and the routes can just be, I don't know, the states or the roads in between, I don't really care. There's no other way we can really do this, unfortunately. Trust me, I recruited all 2 of my brain cells to try and figure this out. It's just not possible. This makes Unova quite large. In fact, it's about 118 times bigger than Sinnoh, which is the 2nd biggest region we've covered so far. Classic America, always doing things bigger. Why? This will have its pros, of course, obviously more area to work with, but also more area to defend at the same time. But that also comes with a whole host of new Pokemon added to the region. Actually, this is the biggest entry to the National Dex since Generation 1, with 156 new Pokemon, only followed by Generation 1, which really just shows how forward-thinking and new this generation was. Yes, this video is filled with Gen 5 propaganda. Suck me off, I don't care, actually don't. What? Obviously, the bigger area to defend, though, means there's more distance to travel between different attacks, so, you know, it does kind of balance itself out. Enough of that, though, it's time to get down and dirty with it. Every good army starts with its leader. They need to be the brains of the operation, but they also need to be able to keep morale high for the citizens and the army. And who better to fill this role than Gothitelle? It can see the future. Okay, what else do you want me to say? Almost in a similar way to Slowking from Generation 2, the psychic typing really seems to dominate this sort of leadership role. What I'm more interested in here, though, is how her powers seem to involve the stars. One of Gothorita's Pokedex entries states that it harnesses the power from starlight, and it can use this to float stones, for example. Now, one of the only sources of energy that emanate from stars that we can really pull on here is cosmic radiation. Cosmic rays refer to high energy particles originating from outside of the Earth's atmosphere, from supernovae, distant galaxies, black holes, for example. We're talking protons, atomic nuclei, electrons, that sort of stuff. When they enter the Earth's atmosphere, they collide with molecules in the air, forming things known as secondary particles. These secondary particles, combined with the cosmic rays, are what we commonly refer to as cosmic radiation, and it is quite harmful to humans. It tends to damage our DNA in irreparable ways, and can affect stuff such as the central nervous system, giving us like memory loss and shit. Pretty nasty stuff. However, this is quite interesting to scientists. These particles travel at close to light speed, and theoretically, if you could harness the kinetic energy and transfer it into something like usable electrical energy, it could provide a clean source of power to power the entire Earth that could also be harnessable from space, making it viable for space travel, for example. But we're getting quite ahead of ourselves here. The main point is, Gothitelle has managed to achieve energy manipulation. The abundance of cosmic radiation means that her power is infinitely available. And bearing in mind that Gothitelle uses this power to not just float stones, but also see the entire universe play out from start to end, means that this power is almost indefinitely scalable. Now, this power might just be mentally infinite, not physically infinite, so she can only float mediocrely small objects, for example. However, the mental aspect is what's worth focusing on here. Her power of foresight means that she already knows everything that's going to happen, so she can make the best possible play. This is very similar to how we diagnosed Metagross's mental capacity from Generation 3, but I do fear this is much worse. Metagross might be a super-powered supercomputer, but we're talking about a being here that can see everything everywhere all at once for the entirety of creation, just because she went stargazing. This places her mental ability at the very top of our tier list and means the plan she's making should be the most optimized to date. So let's get into that, shall we? We find ourselves on the offensive. First, let's get some intel. We need some cover so we aren't discovered during the intel phase, and for this we will incur the abilities of Zoroark. A lot of people think that its abilities end at just being able to cloak itself as other Pokemon or humans, which he will use to get close into the enemy's back lines. However, he is capable of much more than that. After infiltrating the ranks and positioning himself at the center of the headquarters, he can create illusions that hundreds of people can see, producing a bubble around the area, making it easier for other Pokemon to come in completely undetected. A lot of Pokemon have this ability to be able to elude others in forms of illusions, and I believe he's doing this by light manipulation. This can be achieved in a plethora of ways in the real world, both naturally and unnaturally. Just look, for example, at mirages that are seen in deserts. The temperature gradient between the air and the hot sand is that large that it causes light to bend and refract, causing things like floating images or pools of water to appear to our eyes, things of different colour and position. In a more unnatural sense, stage performers use the Pepper's Ghost illusion. This utilises glass between an audience and an object, and then lighting and a reflective screen is used to make the object appear ghost-like or transparent, for example. Or even holography, the practice of using lasers to create complex interference patterns on a photosensitive material, i.e. holograms. You don't need me to explain how they work, because nobody really cares. Zoroark could use this on a massive scale to completely fool everybody in the building or the area, for example, to allow more intel gatherers to enter the scene. Firstly, Swoobat. Being one of the resident flyers of the region, it can fly overhead, conduct head counts of the enemy, for example, suss out all of the heavy hitters, and then relay the information back to the ground assault so they can adjust their plans accordingly. That is, of course, if Gothitelle didn't already know everything that was going to happen. Literal cheat code. That being said, no more intel is required. It's time to search and destroy. Firstly, we have containment. Send in the monkeys. Simisear and Simipour use their respective Fireboy and Water Girl abilities to completely encapsulate the area in a ring of a controlled fire, preferably, for example, in a forest, but this can literally be done anywhere. Simisear uses the well-documented ability of pyromancy, requiring specific dietary requirements, which are also seen in the real world. Every real-life animal has different dietary needs to be able to produce the energy they need to survive, some relying on plants, some relying on meat, for example. Simisear, however, tends to have a specific dietary requirement for sweets, which leads me to believe he's using specific sugars and carbohydrates to be able to fuel his pyromancy. These are extremely long-lasting and highly concentrated sources of energy, which makes a lot of sense since he's converting it straight into thermal energy, presumably through a specific enzyme that he's producing in his body. Simipour has high-pressure water that it shoots from its tail, almost similar to water jets, or also known as the sharpest cutting edge on the planet. This has far more impressive feats than even diamond cutting tools. It's way more sustainable, less waste is produced, it's more precise, it's just 10 times better. And even though we aren't using it as an offensive tool here, we absolutely could. Stay tuned. And keep in mind here that the enemy encampment still has no idea what's going on, thanks to the help of Zoroark. Whilst this is happening, we have extra drills tunneling underneath the enemy encampment, whose drills can literally bore through anything despite its thickness, which is absolutely preposterous, if I'm going to be completely honest. By that logic, he could go through the Earth's core, but I'm going to ignore that completely because I don't want a headache. I think it's pretty safe to assume he can go through some dirt or even some rock, bearing in mind they build their homes normally about 300 feet under the Earth's surface, which also makes them undetectable to the encampment without even the help of Zoroark. These tunnels can also be utilised by some more ground troops like Durant and Rudigon, who normally just inhabit these tunnels that Excadrill creates in the Pokemon ecosystem. Before they pop out of the ground though and start this ground assault, we have one case of chemical warfare that we seriously need to cover. Mushana secretes a mist that when inhaled makes your nightmares become a reality. Personally, this sounds like a nerve agent, which if you aren't aware, is a gas that stops your nerves from sending signals to your organs. And you forgot how to breathe. This lack of oxygen then makes you go clinically insane, making you hallucinate, therefore making your wildest nightmares become a reality. I.e. the scarecrow fear toxin of the Pokemon world, which also simultaneously instantly kills you. In more minute detail, it achieves this by stopping your body producing a specific enzyme, acetylcholine esterase. This, in other words, I don't know what it is. Doesn't matter what it is though, it stops your muscles from contracting. With your muscles constantly contracting, it uses up all the energy reserves that you have, therefore making you too tired to breathe. Now, not all Pokemon have to breathe, of course, so it's not going to kill off everybody, however, it's certainly going to do some damage. At this point though, I think Zoroark's illusion has kind of worn off. I mean, there's people just dropping dead. Don't know how you can cover that one up. So it's time to start the assault. Of course, the Excadrills now burrow up into the main compound and start the assault, but the main bulk of it is yet to come. To break into the compound by force, there is first, of course, the security breaches. Conkeldurr, nicely enough, tells us the scientific process he's using to break down barriers, which is centrifugal force, or in reality, it's inertia. Hi guys, it's been a while, like 2 months. Oh, that's quite a while. Basically, what I was going to discuss in the next part of Conkeldurr's inertia thing is completely wrong. Okay, I did it like 2 months ago. I'm sorry, it's just wrong. And I don't want to misinterpret anything, so it took me like an hour to figure out what it actually was. It's hurting my head right now. So bear with me and I'll try and explain as best as I can with the research I've just done why the inertia is so impactful on the force that Conkeldurr puts out. In the new segment of Calm Mathematics, it's a nice little break from, you know, the hustle and bustle of the video. For the purposes of what I'm trying to say, just see inertia as inertia is mass. Ignore the element symbol that I've put in there. It basically just means inertia is mass. It's probably writ wrong, but at this point, I actually don't give a shit. Inertia is basically how much force an object can have or take before it starts being impacted in its movement. Think of it like two identical bricks on a table, but one is made of styrofoam and one is made of brick. It's just made of brick. To find out which is which, all you'd have to do is push each with the same amount of force, and obviously the styrofoam one is going to move further. That's because it has less inertia or less mass, hence them being technically the same thing. With me so far? Fantastic. It gets worse. To calculate inertia, you use the mass times the radius squared. So let's say I have this pen, right? This whiteboard pen attached to a string, and I'm flinging it around my head in a circle. If I was to give it more string, therefore increasing the radius without affecting the mass, I'm therefore increasing the inertia. But as we've just discussed, the inertia is equal to the mass. So how does that work? Technically, you're not increasing the mass as you're increasing the inertia. You're technically increasing its apparent mass or apparent weight. Let's just ignore this formula for a second while I try and explain to you in the best way what apparent weight technically is, because it is quite hard to wrap your head around. Apparent weight is the weight that you are feeling in any given circumstances, and it changes depending on what circumstance you're in. So imagine you're standing. The floor is putting out a normal force that is equal to your weight, therefore giving you the impression that you weigh your exact real weight, which is mass times gravity if you don't know what weight is. Hopefully you understand that, because now it gets a little bit worse. And I just want to throw this in real quick because I thought it was hilarious when I was researching this. So suppose you jump from the top of a building because your dog died. You are falling. I love physicists. Physicists are so funny. When you are falling, there is no ground, and the air cannot put out any normal force on your body as you are falling. Therefore, you feel completely weightless. There is no weight that you feel because there is no force giving you that feeling. Yeah? So now imagine you're standing in an elevator that's moving upwards. Not only have you got the force of the floor, giving that normal force counteracting your weight, but also you are moving upwards, therefore it's giving even more of a stronger force, almost like it's pushing up more on you, therefore making you feel heavier. Hopefully that kind of makes sense to you. So now imagine you are the pen that I'm spinning around on this string. As you go around the circle and I increase the radius, so the circle is now bigger, the pen will feel heavier in a sense. So you're putting yourself in the perspective of the pen to understand apparent weight. So at the end of all this, research I did, I even wondered, well, does apparent weight even affect the force that's being put out onto this wall that Kinkelder's attacking? And the short answer is yes, apparently, according to Google. But honestly, at this point, I'm not even too sure, and my brain is too frazzled to find out the answer. So, nice catch up though, guys. I'll let you get back to the video from 2 months ago. God damn. And since force is equal to mass times acceleration, this would mean that he's putting more force onto his target. He would use this to brute force through the enemy lines, or walls, or literally anything that's in the way, clearing a path for the rest of the squad to drop in. It also helps that Kinkelder's concrete is somehow more stronger than normal concrete, which I'm presuming he's changing the heterogeneous mixture in a way, i.e. changing one of the ingredients in the concrete. It could even be adding ground up Machamp arms into the mix, which if you've seen my short on Machamp, you would know why this is. I.e. go and watch that when you're done with this, please. I need views. To deal with the more formidable or strong surfaces though, we will employ the help of Heatmore, who can melt through steel to eat Durant's vital organs. Yes, he actually does that. That's in the Pokedex. He eats Durant's organs. Pure organs. I would imagine Heatmore's tongue is comprising of a similar system to thermite, which when ignited by heat or chemical reaction, which let's be honest is the more logical answer, it's happening inside of a living organism, undergoes an exothermic reduction oxidation, which is basically a redox reaction. This creates a large amount of heat in a small area that gets to about 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit or 3,500 degrees Celsius, if I remember correctly. This is hot enough to melt through the large majority of things, but if they have something that we can't melt through, don't worry, we have Simipour. I told you need to remember that. Very important stuff. Next up, we have what I like to call the Stampeders, i.e. Zebstrika and Scolipede. Zebstrika is said to generate sounds of thunder when he is running, and ignoring the fact, he's an electric zebra, so it could just be that. I'm going to say it's because he's running at least Mach 1, or the speed of sound. When something moves faster than the speed of sound, what's happening is it's that fast that it's pushing the air particles in front of it closer and closer together, creating a point of increased pressure. And then when you move fast enough, as you can tell by my incredible drawing here, that pressure then explodes in a sonic boom, sending this massive wave of particles down towards you, and when you hear it, boom, i.e. sonic boom, which I'm presuming is what the Pokedex is calling the sound of thunder when he runs. This would mean that anyone in the way of Zebstrika during this wild charge, let's say, would be immediately sent into the nearest wall. But what if you can't run that fast, like Scolipede, for example? Well, he doesn't need to. After he tackles his target to the ground, he injects them with deadly poison. You know what? I really just love chemical warfare. So after these beasts come in and completely distract everyone, they won't even notice the tank unit coming in. Firstly, the tank. Of course. Gigalith absorbs solar energy and internally magnifies it to fire it from its mouth. Have you ever used a magnifying glass to set ants on fire? No, me neither. But essentially, that's what do you mean you've fucking done it, you sicko? Gigalith will probably be using one or many more convex lenses inside of its body to magnify all of the light onto a focal point. Convex lenses are thicker in the center than they are the edges in order to achieve this. And since glass has a different refractive index than air, what happens is when it passes through the material, it changes direction, all meeting at a singular focal point. Think of Gigalith like a faster ray gun. The weapon fires almost instantly, meaning there's practically no way to avoid it. Of course, if you're moving faster than light, then that's absolutely fine. Of course you can do that. However, you have a mass, and Einstein said, nah. Now, obviously, it's going to take Gigalith a large time to charge this weapon and have it ready for use. So, in this situation, we're going to use him as bait to attract all the survivors of, I don't know, the suffocation so that these Pokemon can dispatch them. Starting, of course, with Amogus. This guy puffs off poisonous spores, which causes mushrooms to spontaneously grow wherever they land. How very suspicious. This will immobilize anyone as it sinks its roots into the skin of any Pokemon that it lands on, then causing them to become a shit version of Cyborg, 50% man and 50% imposter. I swear that's the end of the Amogus jokes. If that's not good enough though, and somehow you're still approaching Gigalith, now you're stuck in an electrified web. Galvantula lays electrified webs and threads that when touched can land paralysis for 3 days and 2 nights. 72 hours, and trust me, this assault is not going to last that long. Now, since spider silk is naturally quite a poor conductor, I would imagine that this spider silk is made of a slightly different compound. I mean, it is a fictional 0.8 meter tall spider. I would hope it's something different. This could also open up the possibility of it being slightly stronger than normal spider silk, which is already extremely strong, by the way. It could be fused with metal, for example, or maybe coated in a graphene nanotube. Who knows? The recipe is also very top secret, i.e. it's not in the Pokédex, and that's where my source material ends. And then somehow, if you're still moving, after all of this, a big fuck off crocodile jumps out the ground and tears you to shreds. Crocodile works in a similar way to Feraligator from Generation 2's video, which if you haven't seen, I'll quickly sum it up for you. They death roll. They lock down with their massive jaws of up to 5,000 psi in some cases, and then death roll around on the floor like a Gmod ragdoll, literally tearing you to pieces. Crocodile could also be used in a sort of lookout way, since it's also stated in the Pokédex he can see up to 30 miles in a sandstorm. Trust me, no threat is going unnoticed. Let's just take a quick intermission though, and quick fire some other ground troops off, since I can't really go into depth on all of them. There is far too many for me to go into, so let's just fire some off. Shao works in a very similar way to Breloom from Generation 2, launching off a flurry of kicks that can't be seen, and skipping over all the calculations from Gen 2's video, they're moving incredibly fast. It's moving so fast and with enough mass that it shatters boulders, like it says in the Pokédex entry. And I mean, I've done the calculations, but you don't care. You don't care at all. I don't know why I try sometimes. Scrafty has enough power in his kicks to shatter Kinkelder's pillars, which, as we've already discussed, are more durable than normal concrete. And if we take into account ground-up Machamp arms, like I've already stated, it would mean they're around this powerful. Yes, that's right, I didn't work it out because, like I said, you don't care. I'm wasting my time. If you want me to do it, I'll do it in a short, alright? I don't have time for it right now, sorry. And finally, Chinchino, whose superpower is basically being slippery and lubricated. Its first secretes an oil that makes attacks like punches just slide right off, allowing him to theoretically slip between enemy lines, kinda like Krogunk, who I've already covered, except just way more slippery. To aid these Pokemon and all of the Pokemon we're covering today in battle, of course we have Nurse Joy's favourite ever since Gen 5 was released, Ordino. Rip Blissey. Sorry, I actually don't care. Shit Pokemon, nobody cared anyway. It's just in the background now. Who actually cares? I mean, Fatphobia might exist. Fatphobia might exist in the Pokemon world. Who knows? It can detect people's heartbeats with the feelers on top of its head, kind of like Mantis, actually, from Guardians of the Galaxy, which now I think about it is kind of weird. Not to mention that even a pebble rolling a mile away can escape Ordino's ears. Not to say that her ears, you know, detach and run after the pebble, it's just she hears it from a mile away. This means a medic is within reach basically at all times during this assault, which is extremely useful to Generation 5's army. I would like to cover more ground troops, but quite frankly, there's that many in this region that I can't cover it all in one video, because it would be an hour long. You're not going to sit here for an hour. My viewer retention would go down the shitter. So I'll only cover one more interesting one, and you can take these four and kind of just do your own research and come back to me kind of like homework. We've got Darmanitan, Caracosta, Cryogonal. What's the other one? I had the other one written down. Seismitoad. You take those, do your own research, come back to me. I'll collect the homework next week in the video after that. Reuniclus uses its arms to crush boulders, which we've already discussed is quite easy in the Pokemon world. However, they are made of a liquid. You know, strange, but not impossible. Oobleck is very well known in this day and age. I mean, it's probably the only non-Newtonian fluid that most people know of, and I'd imagine it works in a similar way. Whenever a hard, sharp blow is dealt to this liquidous body, it suddenly turns very hard, i.e. a non-Newtonian fluid, which, in other words, again, is a fluid with a non-constant viscosity. This allows this Pokemon to slip under doors and through cracks if it really wanted to, making it great for infiltration, but also to deal some massive power. Next, we're going on to some long-range support in the form of Ferrothorn and Golurk. Golurk is a literal energy cannon, and when it tears off the crest on its chest, it goes into an uncontrollable rage, kinda like the Hulk. It's going to fire off these energy cannons at any reinforcements that are trying to make their way over the wall of fire, trying to control the aerospace in another sense. But what about air support that's actually going to help with the battle? Well, that's where Ferrothorn comes in. They can fire off steel spikes that will almost rain down like arrows onto the the area of effect, causing some big damage. And funnily enough, steel is a very common arrowhead type for, well, real-world arrows. Imagine if steel-tipped arrows had the same mass as steel spikes. The amount of damage that would do is ridiculous, but I mean, how far could you fire them? The increased mass would then require more energy to get them airborne. Well, let's find out, shall we? Absolutely not. There is nowhere near enough information in the Pokédex for me to work that out. I'm not a magician. I'm a scientist. But finally, we get on to the air supports, the aerial threats. And I say threats, there's only one, because that's all we need. Volcarona, also known as the Rage of the Sun, rains down burning scales. Most of the danger in these scales, funnily enough, is not the burning heat. It's actually the way they rob the surrounding air of oxygen. Obviously, we know the three things required to make a fire, those being heat, fuel, and oxygen. In the event of an unwinnable situation, we retreat all of our troops, and Volcarona flies over tops, drops these scales that burn in a certain way, I don't know how, in a way that robs all of the oxygen from the air. This will theoretically suffocate all of the Pokemon that we have left on the field. However, this just wouldn't work in the real world, I'm not going to lie to you. You can't just take the oxygen out of one specific part of the atmosphere without it filling up from the oxygen outside of that one area of the atmosphere. Now, one way I could possibly think about this actually making sense is if they replaced the oxygen in the air with a slightly denser gas, therefore not allowing any more oxygen to get in, allowing them to suffocate. This could technically happen since one of the byproducts of fire tends to be carbon dioxide, dependent on the fuel, and since that is heavier than oxygen, it would sit kind of in that battlefield area, or technically it could be carbon monoxide, which is a lot more dangerous, and I swear I've already covered that in a previous episode, but either way, that's really the only way I can think of this working. Not just robbing the oxygen. The Pokédex needs to do some fact-checking sometimes, you know? Either way, the Pokédex's word is basically the Bible of all these videos I'm doing, so I'm not going to argue with it, I'm just going to take it at face value. This is the last resort, obviously, the final gambit, the nuke. You've got 30 kills, you drop the nuke, that's it. It ends the battle completely. There's no more going back into fight after this. But what's arguably more scary is the final Pokemon we're going to cover today of this region, also known as the Cleanup Crew of One, Beheem. Beheem? It uses its psychic powers to completely wipe or change the memories of anybody it pleases. So let's say Unova's in a winning situation, for example. They leave like 3 Pokemon left alive, and they completely rewrite their memories of events and make them think, oh, it was just like a nuclear reactor blown up and it's killed everybody. Not to mention the massive fuck-off army that's just ran straight through us. They relay this information back to their superiors, of course, and they have no idea Unova even attacked them. No counter-attack to worry about because they're just kind of chilling. We're not participating in the war, guys. We are vibing. But let's flip to the other side of the coin real quick and cover what would happen if they were losing a battle. Suddenly, the enemy just starts attacking themselves out of nowhere. What? Beheem has completely rewritten their minds, and now they just think they're attacking each other. They think it's Fight Club. There are very few Pokemon I can think of that would actually be able to resist mind control abilities, mostly some high-level psychic Pokemon, let's say Metagross or Slowking, for example, but they're the ones ruling the rest of the regions. They're not going to be on the front lines dealing with the actual damage, are they? Maybe Slowking could make like an anti-mind control device for some of his troops, but to even start production on that, you'd need to know there was a threat in order to make that countermeasure. No one even remembers he was there. Who is he? He's the Phantom Menace. When all's said and done, I'd imagine that Unova could not be beat very easily. However, we've covered enough regions now that we actually see some holes in their plans that are countered by other regions. Earthquakes from Tyranitar, for example, completely disrupts the Excadrill tunnel system because it's just going to kill everyone in the bloody tunnels. Mega Metagross can react extremely quickly to all of these threats, bearing in mind that it has 4 supercomputers as brains. And of course, Mega Salamence can obviously fly fast enough to avoid a Golurk energy blast. But at the end of the day, when you really think about it, it all comes down to Gothitelle. She already knows everything that's going to happen in this war. She, in essence, is literally just playing her part. She knows whether she's going to win, she knows whether she's going to lose, she knows she's doing everything physically possible to fit in with her role. If there was a way to win the war, she would know about it, and she'd be able to come up with much more complex strategies than my feeble human mind could ever come up with. So I say, let's just leave her to it. All right, she knows what she's doing. Would I live in Unova during this war? I mean, strategically, no. I think Gen 3 has the upper hand offensively, and Gen 4 has the more better living conditions. However, I'm still going to say yes, because Gen 5 is just fucking amazing, and I just want a chandelier. I'd just be chilling with a chandelier as the bombs are going off. Fucking look at it. It's sick. But what do you think? I mean, I'm serious. Let me know. We've covered enough regions at this point that you should have formed your own opinion at this point in time. This is literally the whole point of me doing this series, in my eyes anyway. I want to start a discussion. I want people using their brains and thinking weird. Just think weird. Trademark. Plus, only like 11% of people make it to the end of my videos, so if you actually, you know, express your opinion, I know you'll have watched to the end, and I'll be extremely thankful. And I might send you like, I don't know, I might send you like 10k or something. What? That's crazy. But anyway, thanks for watching, fellas. That is the end. The next video that I upload on the channel probably won't be one of these Pokemon series videos. I'm going to take a break and kind of just, you know, decipher anything else that I want to do. There's loads of other ideas that I've got while making all these videos. So I'm probably going to act on that and then come back maybe 1 or 2 videos after. It's not going to be that long of a break. I do need to finish the series. But that's everything. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.